The 10th and final plague has been unleashed on Egypt, and it's the worst of them all. Will this plague destroy all of Egypt? Or will the Pharaoh's heart be hardened to where he will let the Israelites go? Let's find out. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Tally Talks Bible. Again, you're going to have to excuse me. I'm still a little sick. I'm feeling much better than I did when I recorded my last video, but I'm still a little bit under the weather as far as being able to speak clearly and properly. But where we last left off, the 10th plague had been unleashed on Egypt, the plague of the firstborn. This plague was going to go through and kill all the firstborn sons. Where we're going to pick up on chapter 12, I'm going to skip a lot of it. I'm just going to kind of break down a summary about what's going on. It's basically going to be talking about what ends up becoming called the Passover. So during this plague, before it gets into details of what happens, it stops and it breaks down and says, hey, this is how we will discern the difference between the Egyptians and Israelites. And the Lord tells the Israelites to slaughter a lamb, and you must feast upon this lamb, and you must spread its blood upon your doorframe. And when the Lord unleashes the destroyer will pass by your house, and they are to wait until morning before leaving. The lamb that they slaughter must be without blemish, must be free of any defect, and they must roast it. They want to roast it so that all the blood is cooked out, because we'll come to find out later on through Exodus that consuming blood is considered very bad in the Jewish culture. So by roasting it, all the blood gets released from the meat. It also says that it all must be consumed before morning, and if it's not consumed, it must all be burnt up before morning. So that most of chapter 12 is what that's all talking about, and that goes on from verse 1 to verse 29. And it also goes into detail about how they have to eat unleavened bread, which unleavened bread is bread without yeast. So it doesn't take as long for it to be prepared and made, which is part of the reason why it said that they want to be eating unleavened bread in this scenario, because it's made very quickly. And it just kind of breaks down and says, hey, this will be a feast from now on, and you are to remember this occasion for when I have unleashed this destroyer upon Egypt, and it has taken over the firstborns. So where I'm going to pick up is in chapter 12, verse 31, and it's actually going to talk about what happens and how all the firstborns were actually killed by the destroyer. So that's where I'm going to pick up. Like I said, verse 31, chapter 12. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people, you and the Israelites, go. Worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me. The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise they said, we will die. We will all die. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added and carried it on their shoulders in kneading troughs, wrapped in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. There were around 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough the Israelites had brought from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast, because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Now the length of time the Israelites people lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt. On this night, all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. So that little part there is just saying how. So what's happened now is the destroyer has came through and has taken the life of all the firstborns. So because of this, there was not a house in Egypt that did not have a death in it. And this is where the Pharaoh, his heart finally becomes unhardened, and he tells them to go, get out. And all the other Egyptians are like, yes, leave. Because if you stay, we'll die. because of all the death that has occurred during this last plague. And as it was said before in earlier passages, that they would plunder the Egyptians. So that has now come to pass. They have silver and gold and clothes, and they've taken everything with them. And like I said a while ago, they have the unleavened bread before the yeast was added, so they can make it quickly. This next part. Oh, before I get to that, also I want to make mention of this. It comes back to the instance in Genesis 15, where it's talking about the 400 years that the Lord told Abraham that your people will be enslaved in the land that's forward to them. And it's reiterated right here. It says they were in Egypt for 430 years. Now, I know it says 400 years, but they just, basically put that in as like a round number instead of being exact. 43, verse 43 through 50, I'm going to kind of skip over that again. That's talking about the Passover, and it's just restrictions. It's saying, I'm just going to give a summary of it. It says that, if anyone in your land that's foreign, they're not allowed to eat. You have to be circumcised in order to eat the Passover meal. It's just basically laying down rules and regulations, stuff that we don't really do today about the Passover feast. It's a day of remembrance of the Passover. We're going to go on to chapter 13 here, and I'm going to get through this real quick. The Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male, the first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether human or animal. Then Moses said to the people, commemorate this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today in the month of Evi, you are leaving. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. You are to observe the ceremony in this month. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the seventh day hold a festival to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during those 7 days, nothing with yeast in it to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On the day, tell your son, I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that this law of the Lord is to be on your lips. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand. You must keep this ordinance at the appointed time every year. At appointed time year after year. So what it's saying here is, it's basically saying this is also, the Passover, and then we're going to have this other event that occurs. It's the Day of Atonement, when um, the Lord has gotten them out of Egypt. So the Passover is for when they were saved and passed over by the destroyer, and then this one is when they were allowed out of Egypt. And again, it's talking about the bread without the yeast, unleavened bread. There's no real reason at this point why they would keep eating the unleavened bread. It doesn't really make mention of why. Before it made sense because they were in a hurry. So hurry up and make the bread. It's quicker, easier to make without yeast. But it doesn't really say why to make it here during this time. And it says it's going to be a festival for 7 days. Or it's going to be a 7-day long, period of worship. And it's basically saying it's to do it in remembrance of when this happened. So you can tell your children and your children's children, so it's being passed down throughout the generations. Let's pick back up on verse 11. After the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he promised, on oath to you and your ancestors, you are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeemed with the lamb every firstborn donkey, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem every firstborn among your sons. In days to come, when your son asks you, what does this mean? Say to him, with a mighty hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed the firstborn of the people and animals in Egypt. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb and redeem each of my firstborn sons. And it will be like a sign of your hand and a symbol on your forehead that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand. So what's going on here is, back when they were still in Egypt, they had to slaughter the lamb. They had to sacrifice the lamb in order for the destroyer to pass over them. So now this is going to be a thing in remembrance. They're going to sacrifice the firstborn of the animals in order to sanctify and consecrate their firstborn children, the sons, their firstborn sons. It comes back to the firstborn sons. And this is going to be like a sign that because of the sacrifice, their sons will be saved from the destroyer once again. It's just going to be like in a remembrance kind of way. It's symbolic. Like it says, it's going to be like a symbol on your forehead. Um, so in this next section, it just kind of jumps ahead, and this is the main part of this that I wanted to get to. I'm gonna go through chapter 14 and 15, and this right here is going to be, I'm sure some of you know that have read into this, or even if you've seen, there's a movie that I wrote watching, The Prince of Egypt, that's all about what's going on right here in this section of Exodus. But I'm going to pick back up on verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road, through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battles. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, so they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. So in this section here, it's saying um, there was a shorter route they could have taken, but they didn't go that way because the Lord had feared that these people, if they were led in that area and there was um, possibility of battles to be had, that the Israelites would want to flee back to Egypt. So he took a longer route to ensure that they wouldn't have that happen. And he was also there guiding them. This is the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud and in a pillar of fire. And if you think of a pillar, I see it. It could be just because, like I mentioned that movie before. In the movie Prince of Egypt, it's kind of like a twister when it says cloud, kind of similar to like a small tornado, and then a pillar of fire. You're thinking of pillar, you're something that's long, it's cylindrical. That's what I envision in my mind. So like a dust tornado and like a fire tornado. And it's talking about there's so many instances when the Lord comes into play where he's wind or he's fire, he's light, or he's think about back in Genesis when he breathed in, gave the breath of life to Adam. We're going to start up on chapter 14 here. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pharoah, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite of Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, him in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, what have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services. So he had his chariots made ready and took his army with him. He took 600 of the best chariots along with all the other chariots of Egypt. With officers over all of them, the Lord hardened the heart of the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites, who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pharoah, opposite of Baal-Zephon. So now we see here that the Lord is telling them, hey, do these circles, the zigzags, and everything. And it's making mention here that I'm guessing that maybe the Pharaoh had sent scouts out and realized that maybe they had fled, or it doesn't really say. Maybe because it was supposed to be the Israelites were going to be gone for 3 days, to do sacrifice and everything, and then come back. Well, it doesn't really state how the Pharaoh knew that they were running away, but they realize this, and now they're like, no, we're going to go after him. The Lord hardens their heart because the Lord is not done with Pharaoh. He's not done making an example of the Pharaoh. Continues on. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said, Moses, what was it because there was no graves in Egypt? Excuse me. Was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in this desert. Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see deliverance. The Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they will go in after them. And I will gain glory through Pharaoh and all his army, through his chariots and horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I gain glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and all his horsemen, and his horsemen." So what's going on here now is the Lord saying to Moses, "Hey, there's no time to pray about this. Get into action. Outstretch your hand and see what's going to happen." And he's saying this will be the last time you see these Egyptians, which means the Lord is going to take care of them. He's going to make sure that these Egyptians never bother the Israelites again. Continues on with verse 19. Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other side, so neither went near the other all night long. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on the dry ground, with with a wall of water on the right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptian army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of the chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it. And the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him in and in Moses his servant. So it's finally come to pass. Hand is outreached. It says the Red Sea. Um, a lot of stuff has been studied on, and it's actually probably more. It's more like the Reed Sea. It says Red Sea, but it's the Reed Sea, and it's a small and narrow portion of the sea, which makes it more possible for them to cross. Not to mention, it said something like 600,000 men. The probability of that is very low once you start thinking about it. And you think in times of other people later on, right? Um, it's called, hyperbole. Like they want to make their numbers seem greater than they actually were to make them seem better. But the numbers and stuff, it just don't add up. Um, Now that the Egyptians have been swallowed up and everything, it's now saying that the Israelites now fear the Lord. They believe in the Lord and they fear Him, which is a good thing in a way. Um, and it just basically all that is breaking it down and saying what happened is that Moses split the sea, the Israelites crossed. Once they got across, the Lord closed the waters back up. And this is showing the power of the Lord to everybody, to the Egyptians, to the people in the area that's around, and to the Israelites. And because of this, a song is going to be sung, and it's titled "The Song of Moses and Miriam," which Miriam is Moses' older sister, the one that when he was, in the basket in the Nile River as a baby, she confronted the Egyptian women and saying, "Hey, I have someone who can nurse that child for you," which was Moses' actual mother. I can't sing very well or at all, and I've already been sick, so I've actually come up with something to where I've had this actually put into song, and I'm going to play it for y'all now, and I hope you enjoy it.
I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God and I will praise him, my Father's God and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them, they sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger, it consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them. I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble, anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified, the leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them by the power of your arm. They will be as still as a stone until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever.
Alright, hope you enjoyed listening to that. I know it's a little lengthy, but it's a really beautiful song. When it's, it's one thing to look at it in the Bible and read it out, but to actually hear it put in with music and, someone that can sing has a beautiful voice. So that pretty much takes care of that chapter, because that's all of most of chapter 15. And then after the song, it says, the Lord reigns forever and ever. It picks up on verse 19. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. And Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her. With timbrels and dancing, Miriam sang to them, "Sing the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea." So it's just basically saying that once all this happened, the song that was just here, that's when they started singing. Is when everything, all the Pharaoh's men and horses and chariots were swallowed up. This is when they started singing. So now, the finishing up this chapter here is just going to talk about how they're starting into the wilderness after going through the sea. Now the Egyptians are no longer following them. They don't have to worry about them on their tail. Now they're just going to be traveling in the wilderness trying to get to the promised land. It's going to pick back up on verse 22. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink it because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and it became fit to drink. There the Lord issued a ruling, an instruction for them, and put them to the test. He said, "If you listen carefully to the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all of his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped near the water. So wrapping that up, they're starting off into the wilderness, and as they're going through the wilderness, they're going to be tested several times. And it's starting out, this is telling you at the end of this chapter that if the Israelites listen and do what is right in the Lord's eyes, instead of, what has been happening in the past, that everyone has been doing what is right in their eyes. And this part goes all the way back to Genesis, at the fall, when the woman saw the fruit of the tree and she saw it with her eyes, and she did what was right in her eyes. Even though she was deceived by the serpent, she still did what she thought was right in her eyes and ate the fruit. But anyway, that's something else to break down later on. So when we pick back up after this, they're going to be going into the wilderness and having tests after test after test, and they're going to be doing a lot of griping. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. And as always, God bless.